The Christmas table looked perfect. Golden lights reflected off the glass plates, candles burned softly in the center. The smell of roasted turkey and warm bread filled the room. Laughter echoed as family members talked over one another. It was the kind of night that looked happy from the outside. But inside, something felt wrong. Laura sat quietly at the end of the table, her hands folded in her lap. She wore a simple blue dress and a polite smile. She had cooked all day, cleaned every corner of the house, made sure everything looked perfect. This was her home, her Christmas. Across from her sat her husband, Mark. He looked relaxed, too relaxed. He laughed louder than usual and drank his wine slowly, watching the people around him instead of his wife. Laura noticed. She always noticed. For weeks, Mark had been distant. Short answers, late nights, cold silence. She told herself it was stress, work pressure, money worries, Christmas tension. She wanted tonight to fix things. Mark suddenly stood up, tapping his glass with a fork. "Everyone," he said, smiling, "I have something special planned." The room grew quiet. Laura's heart skipped. She looked up at him surprised. "A surprise?" someone asked. Mark nodded. "It's Christmas, the perfect time for honesty." Laura felt a strange tightness in her chest. Mark reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a large envelope. Thick, official-looking. He turned toward Laura. "This is for you," he said. Laura blinked. "For me?" People leaned forward. Someone whispered, "How romantic!" Mark placed the envelope in front of her. "Go ahead," he said. "Open it." Laura's hands trembled slightly as she picked it up. She noticed the weight of it, the sharp corners. The way Mark didn't smile at her, only at the room. She slid her finger under the flap and pulled out the papers. Her smile froze. The words stared back at her. Divorce petition. The room disappeared. Laura's ears rang, her fingers went numb. She read the first line again, hoping her eyes were lying. They weren't. Divorce papers. At the Christmas table. In front of everyone. A sharp breath escaped her lips. The room fell silent. "What is this?" someone whispered. Laura slowly lifted her eyes to Mark. "What is this?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Mark sighed dramatically, like he was tired of pretending. "It's time. I didn't want to drag this out." Laura swallowed. "You're giving me divorce papers as a Christmas surprise?" Mark shrugged. "Better than lying another year." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Someone cleared their throat. Laura felt every eye on her. Waiting for her to cry, to beg, to break. Mark continued, "I thought it was better to be honest. We've grown apart. You know that." Laura's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mark leaned back in his chair. "I'm not happy, and I deserve happiness." His mother nodded. "At least he's brave enough to say it." Laura's chest burned. Brave. She looked down at the papers again. Mark's signature was already there. Neat, confident, planned. This wasn't sudden. This was prepared. "You could have talked to me privately," Laura said quietly. "Why? There's nothing left to talk about." The words cut deep. Someone on Mark's side of the family whispered, "She always was too quiet." Another voice added, "Not very exciting." Laura's face grew hot. Years of cooking, cleaning, supporting, smiling, reduced to nothing. Mark stood up again. "I'll stay at my brother's place tonight. You can take your time reading it." He spoke like a man who had already won. Laura looked at him. Really looked at him. He wasn't nervous. He was proud. She realized something then. This wasn't just divorce. This was humiliation. Public, planned, cruel. The room waited. Laura slowly folded the papers and placed them neatly on the table. She lifted her head. Her face was calm. Too calm. "Okay," she said. The word echoed. Mark blinked. "Okay?" Laura nodded once. "If that's what you want." Whispers spread. "That's it?" someone muttered. Mark frowned. "You're not upset?" Laura stood up slowly. "I am, but not surprised." Mark's smile faded just a little. Laura picked up her glass of water and took a small sip. Her hands were steady now. She looked around the table, at the faces judging her, pitying her, enjoying the show. Then she looked back at Mark. "You should enjoy your dinner," she said calmly. "It's a special night." Mark stared at her, confused. This wasn't the reaction he expected. Laura turned and walked toward the kitchen. Behind her, the table erupted in whispers. What is she doing? Is she in shock? She didn't even cry. Laura leaned against the counter, her heart racing. Her reflection stared back at her. A woman who had been underestimated. A woman everyone thought was weak. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Because while everyone at that table thought the night was over, Laura knew something they didn't. This was only the beginning, and the real surprise hadn't been opened yet. Laura stood in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter. Her heart was still racing, but her face stayed calm. She could hear the voices from the dining room. They were not quiet. No one cared if she heard them. "She didn't even cry," someone said. "That's because she knows it's true," another voice replied. Mark's sister laughed softly. "She always acted like a victim." Laura closed her eyes for 1 second. Then she straightened her back. She poured herself a glass of water and drank it slowly. Every movement was careful, controlled. She refused to give anyone the pleasure of seeing her break. She stepped back into the dining room. The talking stopped. All eyes turned to her again. Mark was still standing, talking to his brother like nothing had happened. When he saw Laura, he raised an eyebrow. "You okay?" he asked, pretending to care. Laura nodded. "I'm fine." Mark smirked. "Good. I was worried you might make a scene." Laura met his eyes. That would be rude, especially on Christmas. A few people laughed nervously. Laura walked to her seat and sat down slowly. She picked up her fork and knife, even though she had no appetite. The turkey in front of her looked cold now. "So," Mark's mother said, breaking the silence, "what are you going to do after the divorce?" Laura looked up. "Excuse me?" "Well," the older woman continued, "you've never really worked. Mark paid for everything. Life is expensive." The words were sharp, on purpose. Laura placed her fork down gently. "I've worked," she said calmly, "just not where you could see it." Mark laughed loudly. "Come on, Laura. Cooking and cleaning isn't a career." A few heads nodded. Laura felt a familiar pain, the same pain she had swallowed for years. Mark leaned forward. "Let's be honest. You depended on me." Laura didn't answer. Mark took that as a win. "You'll probably need help. I'm generous, but don't expect too much." Laura slowly turned toward him. "Is that why you did this here? To show everyone how generous you are?" Mark's smile tightened. "I did it here because this is family. No secrets." Laura glanced around the table. Family. People who judged her. People who never defended her. People who enjoyed watching her fall. She nodded slowly. "You're right. No secrets." Mark paused. "What does that mean?" Laura picked up the divorce papers and slid them closer to her plate. "I'll read these carefully. Every page." Mark waved his hand. "There's nothing complicated. I made sure of that." Laura looked at him. "I'm sure you did." Something in her tone made him uncomfortable. Mark cleared his throat. "Anyway, I should go. I've said what I needed to say." He grabbed his coat. "You're leaving now?" someone asked. "Yes, I don't want to ruin Christmas." Laura almost laughed. Mark turned to her one last time. "I'll send my lawyer's number tomorrow." Laura smiled softly. "Please do." Mark hesitated. He was waiting for tears, for anger, for begging. None came. He left, The door closed behind him with a loud click. The room felt empty. Laura sat very still. Then Mark's sister spoke. "Well, that was awkward," another person added. "At least he was honest." Laura stood up. "I think I'll clear the table." "No need," someone replied. "Sit." Laura shook her head. "I need something to do." She began collecting plates. No one stopped her. As she moved around the table, she heard the whispers again. She should have seen it coming. She wasn't good enough for him. She got comfortable. Each word felt like a small cut. In the kitchen, Laura placed the dishes in the sink. Her hands shook for the first time. She looked down. Her phone vibrated. A message. She wiped her hands and checked the screen. Unknown number. "Are you alone?" Laura stared at it. Another message came in. "Don't sign anything yet." Her breath caught. She typed back slowly. "Who is this?" The reply came fast. "Someone who knows what Mark did." Laura's pulse jumped. She leaned against the counter. Another message. And why he chose tonight. Laura's eyes widened. She looked toward the dining room. Everyone was still there, laughing again, acting like the worst moment of her life was entertainment. She typed, "What do you know?" 3 dots appeared. Then the message came. "You're not the only one he betrayed." Laura felt the room spin. Her phone buzzed again. "And the divorce papers are only the beginning." Laura slowly lowered the phone. For the first time that night, fear mixed with anger. This wasn't just about a broken marriage. Something bigger was happening. Something Mark never expected her to find out about. Laura took a deep breath. She wiped her face. Then she walked back into the dining room, holding her head high. If Mark thought he had ended the story tonight, he was wrong. This was only the second chapter, and the truth was about to come out. Laura sat alone in the guest bedroom that night. The Christmas lights outside blinked softly through the window, but they felt far away. The house was quiet now. Everyone had gone to sleep, pretending nothing was wrong. But Laura knew everything had changed. Her phone rested in her hands. She read the messages again. "You're not the only one he betrayed. The divorce papers are only the beginning." Her fingers trembled. She typed slowly. "Laura, if you know something, say it." A few seconds passed. Then her phone buzzed. "I didn't want to ruin your night, but Mark forced my hand." Laura's chest tightened. "Laura, who are you?" This time, the reply took longer. "Someone who trusted him. Someone who lost everything." Laura leaned back against the pillows. Her mind raced through faces. Friends, family, coworkers. None of it made sense. She typed again. "Laura, why contact me now?" The answer came in pieces. "Because tonight wasn't just about humiliating you, it was about rushing you." Laura frowned. "Laura, rushing me into what?" The message appeared slowly, like each word carried weight. "Into signing those papers before you find out the truth." Laura sat up straight. Her heart pounded loudly in her ears. "Laura, what truth?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Mark is hiding money. A lot of it." Laura swallowed hard. "And not just from you." Her breath caught. She stared at the screen, memories flooding back. Late nights, secret phone calls, business trips that never made sense, accounts he said were empty, papers he told her not to touch. She had trusted him. Too much. "Laura, why tell me?" The response was quick. "Because you deserve to know before he destroys you." Laura stood up and began pacing the room. "Laura, proof?" The reply came with an attachment. A screenshot. Bank transfers. Dates. Amounts that made her dizzy. Her hands shook as she scrolled. This wasn't small money. This was life-changing. Another message followed. The house is in your name for a reason. He thought you forgot. Laura stopped walking. The house. She remembered the day they signed the papers. Mark had laughed and said it was easier for taxes. She'd questioned it once. He shut her down fast. Her phone buzzed again. You also have access to something he doesn't realize. Laura typed with shaking fingers. Laura. What? The backup account. Her heart skipped. Laura opened her email. She searched old messages, deep ones, forgotten ones. There it was. A confirmation email from years ago, an account Mark had set up but never removed her name from. Her breath came fast. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was power. She sat back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. All those years she thought she was invisible, weak, replaceable. But now she saw it clearly. Mark had underestimated her. Her phone buzzed one last time. Don't confront him yet. Let him think he's won. Laura typed back. Why? The reply came almost instantly. Because people reveal the most when they believe you're broken. Laura locked her phone and placed it beside her. She closed her eyes. Her chest hurt, but not from sadness, from anger, from clarity. The next morning, Laura awoke before sunrise. The house was quiet again. She made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. The divorce papers lay in front of her. She read them slowly this time. Every line, every word. She noticed things she had missed before. Rushed dates, unfair terms, missing disclosures. Mark had been sloppy, arrogant. She smiled slightly. Later that morning, Mark returned. He walked in like nothing had happened. Morning, he said casually. Laura looked up from her coffee. Good morning. He paused. You slept okay? Yes, she replied. Very well. That made him uneasy. Mark glanced at the papers. Did you sign them? Laura shook her head. Not yet. He frowned. Why not? I want to understand everything first, she said calmly. Mark scoffed. There's nothing to understand. Laura met his eyes. Then you won't mind waiting. Something dark flickered across his face. I don't like delays. Laura stood up. Neither do I. She picked up her mug and walked past him. Mark watched her closely. You seem different, he said. Laura stopped at the doorway. Maybe. Or maybe you're just seeing me clearly for the first time. Mark didn't answer. Laura went upstairs and closed the door behind her. She leaned against the door, her heart racing. This was no longer about embarrassment. This was about control. And Mark was losing his. Slowly. Silently. Laura picked up her phone again. She typed one message. Laura, I'm ready. The reply came fast. Good, because he's running out of time. Laura looked at the door, at the man she once loved. And she realized something powerful. The Christmas dinner didn't end her life. It woke her up. And soon, Mark would regret choosing that night. Laura moved through the next few days like nothing was wrong. She smiled when Mark spoke. She made breakfast. She asked polite questions. She listened. And Mark relaxed. He believed the worst was over. He believed he had won. That was his biggest mistake. Laura spent her mornings quietly organizing documents, old files, emails, bank records. She worked slowly, carefully, never rushing. Each piece told the same story. Mark had planned everything. The dinner, the timing, the pressure. He thought shock would make her sign without thinking. But Laura was thinking now, very clearly. One afternoon, Mark came home early. I talked to my lawyer, he said casually. We should finish this soon. Laura looked up from her book. Of course. He watched her closely. You're being very agreeable. Laura smiled. I'm tired of fighting. That answer pleased him. Good, he said. That will make things easier. Laura nodded. Inside, she felt nothing. That evening, Mark invited friends and family over again. A small get-together, he said, to clear the air. Laura agreed. She even helped prepare the house. The table looked perfect again. Candles, plates, calm. No one noticed how steady her hands were. As guests arrived, Mark played the role of the kind man. He hugged people, he laughed, he avoided Laura's eyes. When everyone was seated, Mark raised his glass. I want to thank everyone for being here, he said. This hasn't been easy. Laura sat quietly. I know the divorce shocked you, Mark continued, looking around, but sometimes things end, and that's okay. A few people nodded. Mark turned to Laura. Would you like to say something? Laura stood. The room went silent. She smiled gently. Yes, she said, I would. Mark leaned back, confident. Laura placed her hands on the table. I want to thank Mark, she began, for teaching me an important lesson. Mark's smile grew. About patience, she continued, and truth. Mark's smile faltered. Laura looked around the table. For years, I believed love meant staying quiet, trusting without questions. She turned back to Mark. I was wrong. A murmur spread through the room. Mark laughed nervously. Is this necessary? Laura ignored him. I was handed divorce papers at the same table, in front of all of you. The room grew uncomfortable. I was expected to break, to beg, to disappear. She paused. But instead, I listened. Mark shifted in his chair. Laura reached into her folder and pulled out a document. This house, she said, is legally mine. Gasps filled the room. Mark shot to his feet. That's not true. Laura looked at him. Check the deed. She laid another paper down. These accounts, she said, were hidden. Mark's face went pale. Stop, he said sharply. Laura held up her hand. I'm not finished. She turned to the guests. Mark planned to leave me with nothing, but he forgot something. She met Mark's eyes. He forgot that I was paying attention. The room erupted in whispers. Mark's voice shook. You can't do this. Laura smiled calmly. I already did. She picked up the divorce papers. I will sign. On my terms. Mark's confidence collapsed. Please, he whispered. Let's talk privately. Laura shook her head. No more secrets. Mark's mother stood up. Mark, is this true? Mark said nothing. Silence answered for him. Laura closed the folder. I won't take revenge, she said. I'll take my freedom. She turned toward the door. As she walked away, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Light. Behind her, Mark's voice broke. Laura, wait! She didn't, because the calm was over, and the collapse had begun. The house felt different after that night. Quiet. Heavy. Mark sat alone at the dining table long after everyone left. The candles had burned out, leaving thin trails of smoke in the air. The same table where he had tried to end Laura's life with a few papers. Now it felt like a courtroom, and he had lost. Upstairs, Laura closed the bedroom door gently. Her hands were steady, but her heart was still racing. Not from fear, from release. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small. She packed a small bag and placed it by the bed. She didn't rush. There was no need to. Mark knocked on the door. Laura, he said softly, please. She didn't answer. He knocked again, louder this time. We need to talk. Laura opened the door just enough to look at him. What is there left to say? She asked calmly. Mark's face was pale. His confident posture was gone. His shoulders were slumped. I messed up, he said quickly. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Laura tilted her head. You planned it. He shook his head. I planned the divorce, not This. Laura opened the door fully. You planned to humiliate me, she said. You planned to leave me with nothing. That's not true, Mark said too fast. Laura looked at him. You chose Christmas. You chose an audience. Mark swallowed hard. I panicked, he admitted. I thought if I did it fast, you wouldn't fight. Laura nodded slowly. I'm right about one thing. Mark leaned forward. What's that? I'm done fighting, she said. Mark's eyes filled with fear. Laura, please, he said. We can fix this. She crossed her arms. How? I'll change the papers, he said. You can have more. Anything you want. Laura laughed softly, not with humor. You're still bargaining, she said. You still don't understand. Mark's voice cracked. I'll lose everything. Laura met his eyes. You already did. Mark fell silent. The next morning, news spread fast. Family members called. Some apologized. Others demanded explanations. Mark didn't answer most of them. Laura did. She stayed calm, polite, honest. I'm okay. Better than okay, she told them. Mark watched her from across the room, unable to understand how she looked so peaceful. Later that day, Mark's lawyer called. The conversation was short. Very short. Mark slammed his phone down. This isn't fair, he shouted. Laura looked up from her coffee. What isn't fair? You know exactly what, he snapped. You're taking everything. Laura shook her head. I'm taking what's mine. Mark ran his hands through his hair. You don't need all of it. Be reasonable. Laura stood up slowly. I was reasonable for years. You just didn't notice. Mark's voice dropped. If you do this, I'll be ruined. Laura stepped closer. You weren't worried about ruining me, she said quietly. Mark had no answer. That night, Mark tried a different approach. He brought out old photos. Trips, smiles, memories. Remember this? He asked softly. Laura looked at the picture. She remembered the moment. She also remembered the lies. I remember who I was and who you were pretending to be. Mark's eyes filled with tears. I loved you. Laura nodded. I loved the idea of you. That was worse than yelling. Mark broke. He sat on the couch and covered his face. I can't start over. I don't know how. Laura watched him for a moment. Then she picked up her bag. You'll figure it out, just like I had to. She walked toward the door. Mark jumped up. Where are you going? Laura turned back one last time. Somewhere I don't have to beg for respect. She opened the door. Cold air rushed in. Mark called after her. Laura! She stopped, but didn't turn around. You wanted this ending. I just finished it. The door closed. Mark stood alone. Days passed, then weeks. Mark's friends stopped calling, his accounts were frozen, his plans collapsed one by one. Laura moved into a small, quiet place of her own. She slept better. She breathed deeper. One afternoon, she received a final message from Mark. Can we talk? Laura read it, then she deleted it, because his world had fallen apart, and hers was finally coming together. The first Christmas morning after the divorce was quiet. No loud voices, no fake smiles, no fear. Laura woke up in her small apartment as sunlight touched the window. A simple tree stood in the corner, decorated with a few lights and handmade ornaments. It wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. She made coffee and sat by the window, watching people walk by. Families, couples, strangers. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was missing something. She felt free. Her phone buzzed. A message from her lawyer. Everything is finalized. It's officially over. Laura closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Over. The word didn't hurt anymore. She smiled. Later that day, Laura went for a walk. The air was cold, but it felt fresh. She passed shops filled with holiday sales and happy music. Once, this would have made her sad. Today, it didn't. She stopped at a small cafe and ordered a coffee. The barista smiled and said, "Merry Christmas." Laura smiled back, "Merry Christmas." It felt real. Across town, Mark sat alone in a nearly empty house. The furniture was gone. The walls echoed. The silence was loud. He stared at his phone, reading old messages from Laura, messages he once ignored, messages full of care he never returned. He thought about that night. The dinner, the papers, the confidence he had, and how fast it all disappeared. He believed power meant control. He was wrong. Back at the cafe, Laura opened a notebook. She had started writing again. Thoughts, plans, ideas she once pushed aside. She wrote about boundaries, about respect, about how silence should never mean surrender. She closed the notebook and paid for her drink. As she walked out, someone called her name. "Laura?" She turned. It was Mark's sister. She looked nervous. "I didn't expect to see you," the woman said. Laura nodded. "Neither did I." There was an awkward pause. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry," the woman said quietly, "for everything." Laura studied her face. "I believed the wrong person," the sister added. Laura took a breath. "I know," she said. "I did too." The woman swallowed. "Mark isn't doing well." Laura nodded. "I hope he finds peace." The sister looked surprised. "You don't hate him?" Laura shook her head. "Hate takes too much energy." She smiled politely and walked away. That answer stayed with the woman long after Laura left. Weeks passed. Laura settled into a new routine. She took a class, she volunteered, she laughed more than she used to. People noticed. "You look different," a neighbor said one day. Laura smiled. "I feel different." One afternoon, Laura received a letter in the mail. Mark's handwriting. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she opened it. "I'm not writing to ask you back," the letter said. "I just want to say I see you now." Laura read the words carefully. "I thought strength was being loud. I was wrong. You were strong when you stayed calm. I lost you because I didn't value you." Laura folded the letter. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She placed it in a drawer and closed it. Some things didn't need a reply. On New Year's Eve, Laura stood on her balcony watching fireworks light the sky. Each color felt like a promise. She raised her glass. "To new beginnings," she whispered. Somewhere else, Mark watched the same fireworks alone, and he finally understood something too late. That respect, once broken, doesn't come back. Laura turned away from the sky and went inside. She had plans. Not loud ones, not flashy ones, but real ones. The kind that don't need approval. The kind that start quietly and last. And for the first time in her life, Laura knew this truth. The night he tried to end her in front of everyone was the night she finally began.